If you've ever stared at a screen full of code and just thought, wow, this looks like complete alien gibberish, well, you're definitely in the right place. In today's explainer, we're going to totally demystify programming. How? By actually writing your very first lines of Python together. We're taking a super hands-on approach here, so you can start coding right away.
There's a reason Python is so insanely popular. As one GitHub user brilliantly put it, Python was basically designed by a linguist instead of a sadist. It totally lowers the barrier to entry because it prioritizes human readability. It doesn't force you to twist your brain to think like a machine. Instead, the whole thing is built from the ground up to just be intuitive and clean.
So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with Python, the friendly language, dive into basic syntax and arithmetic, actually write your first script, tackle a quick practice challenge, and then map out your Python learning roadmap. All right, part one, Python, the friendly language. Let's look at exactly why this language is just so uniquely accessible if you're an absolute beginner facing that daunting wall of text.
Okay, so what's really fascinating about Python is how it handles data. In older, clunkier languages, you've got to strictly define exactly what type of data every variable holds, kind of like rigid, permanently labeled Tupperware containers. But Python, it uses something called dynamic typing. Think of dynamic typing less like strict boxes and more like flexible sticky notes attached to values in the computer's memory. You don't declare types up front, you literally just slap a label on some data and Python handles the whole shebang behind the scenes.
And here's another real game changer. Python completely drops those confusing curly braces and endless semicolons you see cluttering up languages like Java or C++. Instead, it just relies on simple whitespace and indentation to organize the logic. You can literally follow the flow of the program just by looking at how the text is indented on your screen. It basically forces you to write clean, gorgeous code right from day one. Moving right along to part two, basic syntax and arithmetic. Let's see how all this translates into writing actual code. But hey, before we write our first command, we've got to define one of our most important everyday tools, strings. Now, in the programming world, a string isn't just a word. It's really any sequence of characters, letters, numbers, spaces, punctuation, whatever, safely wrapped up in quotation marks. When Python sees those quotes, it treats whatever is inside as raw, literal text. All right, drum roll please. Here is your very first line of code. The print command does exactly what it sounds like. It tells the computer, hey, output whatever's inside these parentheses directly to the screen. And because we wrapped hi there in those quotation marks we just talked about, Python knows for sure it's a string and prints that exact message right back to us. But, Python isn't just a fancy typewriter. It can absolutely act as your personal calculator, too. Notice how we just dropped the quotation marks here? If we want to add 7 plus 9 plus 22, removing those quotes tells Python to actually perform the math inside the parentheses. So rather than printing the numbers out as plain text, the computer crunches the arithmetic and just spits out the final answer. Let's put these two ideas side by side because this is an absolutely crucial concept. Look at how the left side actually calculates the math, perfectly following the order of operations to output 42. But the right side, because it's fully encased in those quotes, Python treats it as a string. It just prints the raw text exactly as it's written, 22 plus 2 times 10. So those quotation marks are basically your magic toggle switch between, hey, calculate this, and just show me this text.
Okay, section 3, writing your first script. Now that we've got strings and math down, let's build a real program and learn how to actually document our logic.
Here's the thing about writing programs. You don't just want the computer to understand your code. You desperately want other humans, and let's be honest, your future self, to understand it too. That's where the hash symbol, or pound sign, comes in. We use it to write what's called a comment. The second Python sees that hash symbol, it completely ignores everything else on that line. That means you can leave yourself handy little notes right inside your code without breaking the program. To put that into perspective, just look at this isolated, undocumented calculation sitting right next to a neatly commented block. It instantly proves why comments are so essential. Without the comments, someone reading your code is going to scratch their head wondering why on earth are they multiplying 365 by 24? But with the comment, your logic is crystal clear. It's like a little roadmap directly into your thought process. Which brings us to part 4, the practice challenge. We've got all the building blocks, so it's time for an interactive challenge to put your brand new skills to the test.
So, I want you to pause for a second and really think about how you'd solve this specific programming exercise. Fun fact, this is a real problem pulled directly from the famous University of Helsinki Python MOOC. How exactly do we get the computer to figure out how many minutes are an entire year and then actually show us the answer?
Okay, let's break this solution down both mathematically and syntactically into 3 super easy steps. First up, we know there are 365 days in a year and 24 hours in a day. Second, we multiply that result by 60, since of course there are 60 minutes in an hour. And finally, to actually see that result pop up on our screen, we just need to securely wrap all of that arithmetic right inside our print command parentheses.
And boom, here is our final working script. Look at that. We've seamlessly combined our arithmetic, our print command, and our helpful little comment all into one single elegant block of code. If you type this out and hit run right now, your screen would instantly output 525,600. Just like that, you have written a fully functional Python script.
All right, onto our final section, Part 5, your Python learning roadmap. Let's map out exactly where you should head next after you finish up this explainer. We can basically distill a mountain of complex pedagogical literature into a really clean, structured 3-phase roadmap for your next few months. Phase 1 is exactly what we just started today, mastering variables and basic execution. Then, Phase 2 moves you into structuring data. That's where you learn to store loads of info using things called lists and dictionaries, and how to organize your code into reusable functions. Finally, Phase 3 is where you truly transition into software engineering, setting up a local coding environment, using version control like Git, and diving into object-oriented programming. And hey, the best part is you absolutely don't have to fly blind through these phases. There are so many incredible free hands-on platforms out there. Python.org is your go-to for official documentation. Places like Codecademy and PyChallenger, they offer brilliant, interactive, browser-based exercises, meaning you can code without downloading a single thing. The Helsinki MOOC gives you rigorous, structured academic learning, while Exercism is just fantastic later on for practicing local test-driven development and getting actual feedback from real human mentors. So, with the syntax barrier completely lowered, your very first script officially written, and a clear multi-phase roadmap in your back pocket, that barrier to entry, it's completely gone. Python is no longer some scary alien language. It's honestly just a tool, patiently waiting for your instructions. So, the only question left for you to answer is, what incredible automation, game, or application are you going to build next?